Hey, at the beach, on the boat, the boardwalk, the Poconos, your backyard, wherever you might be, you can play the BetParx online casino and sportsbook app. Play your favorite casino games with live dealers on the BetParx online casino and sportsbook app. Make your downtime fun time. Play live baccarat, live roulette, live blackjack right on your phone, plus hundreds of exciting online slots. Slingo Fire and Ice, Fantastic Fireworks, Lucky Cherry, just to name three. Live bet sports while you watch the game on the BetParx online casino and sportsbook app. Bet the first 3 innings, the first 5 innings, the whole game. Bet player performances for hits and home runs, strikeouts, whatever you want. All those prop bets, they're fun stuff. It's safe, it's simple, it's easy to use. BetParx is the only app that I use and recommend. Odds and slots and bets and games right in your pocket. New users, a special deal for you. The BetParx online casino and sportsbook app right now. Bet it. Get up to a $1,000 casino bonus back if you're down in the first 24 hours. Casino bonus has to be wagered. BetParx.com has all the details. Got to be 21 in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, Ohio, or Michigan. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. You love to play, you play to win, you bet. BetParx. Time now for the headlines from the Monday edition of the Smerconish.com daily newsletter. By the way, if you're a new listener, if you're a new viewer to our YouTube channel, sign up for the Smerconish.com daily newsletter. It is both free and worthy. And in today's newsletter, there's lots of mingle news. And maybe I should explain, if I refer to a story as being mingle news, I'm using shorthand for stories about our societal disconnect, self-sorting, that is fueled by technology, things that speak to the need for us to reassociate with one another across class lines, spend time with people who are different, in a word, to mingle. As I will be mingling tonight at the Engelman Theater in Northport, Long Island. Looking forward to that event. It's been on the books for a long, long time. It's like one of those events where you've talked about it, and all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, here it comes. This will be fun. The newsletter links had already been set for this morning by yours truly. Austin is at the helm in the absence of Alice today, and I sent him a note before dispatch, and I said, stop the presses. There is a major story that needs to be included in today's newsletter. Headline, Surgeon General calls for warning labels on social media. This is the sort of principal mingle story in today's newsletter. From the New York Times, the lead is as follows. The United States Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, announced on Monday, today, that he would push for a warning label on social media platforms advising parents that using the platforms might damage adolescents' mental health. Warning labels like those that appear on tobacco and alcohol products are one of the most powerful tools available to the nation's top health official, but Dr. Murthy cannot unilaterally require them. The action requires approval by Congress. No such legislation has yet been introduced in either chamber. TC, I am sensing poll question for Tuesday.
For sure.
Should Congress, right? Should Congress institute a warning label? You know, there's a lot of data, and one of the other mingle stories that I'm going to get to in a moment, there's a lot of data out there that says that the loneliness often brought on by one's addiction to their smartphone is akin to smoking on a daily basis. And now you've got the Surgeon General saying exactly that.
And what will that do? In other words, if the label is put on, what does that then mean? Will people really start using it less? Will people really start being more careful? It has gotten so much, the genie is so far out of the bottle. I'm just not sure that even this can bring it back.
Dr. Murthy said, why is it that we have failed to respond to the harms of social media when they are no less urgent or widespread than those posed by unsafe cars, planes, or food? These harms are not a failure of willpower and parenting. They are the consequence of unleashing powerful technology without adequate safety measures, transparency, or accountability. There's reference in this story to Jonathan Haidt. Jonathan Haidt, the NYU professor, recent guest of mine here on this program and on television, who wrote The Anxious Generation. And of course, Jonathan Haidt is a colleague for research purposes with Gene Twangy. It was Gene Twangy who wrote the book called iGen. Listeners of this program know this is so much a part of the Mingle Project, but all of this social science data is something that we have been on and discussing for years on this program. And I point out again that if you go to Smerconish.com and you click on the Mingle Project, if you're new to this subject area, if you're wondering why would the Surgeon General equate social media with smoking or unsafe cars or unsafe planes, I beg you to take a look at the author interviews that we have listed on my website. There are the jackets of the books, and they're all arranged in chronological order, so they tell a nice story, and you can just listen to them. Take a walk and give a listen. If you're wondering, what did Jonathan Haidt have to say? What did Gene Twangy have to say? What did Bill Bishop have to say, et cetera, et cetera? They're all right there in one location, TC.
I'm thinking that it will probably maybe help those who have younger children who are coming up who don't yet have cell phones. My question is, like, as I just said, how do you stop what's already out there? How do we keep our tweens and teens and young adults and, frankly, Michael, us from spending too much time online? So I don't know if it's going to take another generation the way it did with smoking. Smoking is less common than it used to be in some areas because of the warnings, because of we know now what it does to you. I just don't know how to move this in a faster way to help those who are already so deeply entrenched.
Well, I would say one of the suggestions from Jonathan Haidt and others is sort of a team or group approach, because if you're raising a son or daughter in a school community where everybody is online all the time, and now you come along and you try and impose a little discipline on your son or your daughter, your niece, nephew, granddaughter, grandson, whatever the case might be, you're making them a social pariah.
Right.
Because if that's the way that they're all communicating with one another and now yours can't, then by definition, they're the odd person out. But if there's a group approach, a community approach where everybody is doing it the same way, then all of the kids are on the same, social platform, standing, I guess I should say.
Well, and maybe there's another way to combat it, and that is to be additive rather than subtractive. In other words, instead of taking away or saying you're going to take away the phone or the time or this, you try to add in other things that you've been talking about, being outside, physical activity, things that while you're doing it, you can't necessarily be on your phone. Maybe that's a way to help shift the narrative a little bit more.
So Jonathan Haidt, Gene Twangy, Richard Louv, who wrote Last Child in the Woods, and yours truly are all of the opinion that we've become overprotective in the real world and underprotective in the virtual world. Dr. Murty, the Surgeon General, says teens who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media faced a significantly higher risk of mental health problems. 46% of adolescents said social media made them feel worse about their bodies. U.S. teens are spending on average 4.8 hours per day on social media platforms like YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, according to a Gallup survey of more than 1,500 adolescents released this week. And to your point, TC, that it's not just our kids, but it's also us, story number 2 in a mingle sense in today's newsletter is from The Guardian, where an editor wrote a piece about his own loneliness. I don't spend a lot of time worrying about a lonely old age, it begins, closing in on my 61st birthday. 8 years ago, into a very happy marriage. I've got a wife, 2 teenage stepkids, yada, yada, yada. But he goes on and says, but I'm taking too much for granted. People die, drift apart, fall out, and anyone who knows me will tell you that I can be very irritating. And then he goes on to discuss the lack of socialization that he is feeling. And it brings home the point that it's both the young and it's the older. And in a world where technological advance is moving so quickly, you think about those loose encounters, the weak ties that come from just being out and about in a retail setting or in a convenience store, where if everything now is by barcode, it's one less opportunity for social interaction, one less opportunity for mingling. And then here's another one. This one came from Vox. Is anybody watching the same TV shows anymore? We've had this conversation, TC, repeatedly, where you'll suggest to me a TV show. I'm like, geez, I never heard of that.
You know, right?
Like gone are the days when we're all watching the same 5 channels. It's just another indicator of how we've gone in disparate directions. And then sort of the complement to this is another Times story, New York Times story, about, okay, so where do you go to meet people? I know you read this and took an interest in it.
I think it's so interesting. So what the New York Times did was, and this is obviously New York specific, but I think you can take the ideas that they have and use them in whatever your community is. So what they did is they said, here are 14, this is I think how many they had, 14 real places in the 5 boroughs, meaning in New York area, to meet people in real life. So the first place they said was a place called Record Room. And basically it's a place to spin and groove. And quote unquote, that's sort of how they tagged it. So the question is, if you like music, if you like listening to music, is there a place that you can go in your community to listen to music and meet people? How about a sports enthusiast meetup? They said, how about a New York Liberty game? So they go through all these places. There's a library, art museum. So what is it? The question is, and I think this is really interesting, what is the kind of person that you want to meet? And where would they likely be? So if you want to meet someone who is, if it's important to you that they're a book lover, then find a bookstore, find a library, find something that has to do with books or art or sports or whatever it is that is your fancy. That is where you should hang out with people. And it's just kind of an interesting place. And obviously New York is so varied and has so many places that it's very much probably easier to find these places. But think about where in your small town. I mean, you've said before, sports places, gyms, et cetera, et cetera.
You got to get out of your bubble.
Got to.
Wherever you might be, you've got to force yourself, push yourself to get out of your bubble. Yeah. One last thing, if I may, because now that I'm dialed in on the connection between these mingle-related stories, not a day passes that I don't see something that falls under that umbrella. And so we've collected them and we add to them on the website at Smerconish.com under Mingle News. Spend some time and surf through those stories and see if you don't recognize the common denominator in all of them. Okay, more news now from the Monday edition of the newsletter. Actually, what I'd like to do is just go back and quickly run through poll results since we were last together last Friday. Friday's poll question, do you believe President Biden will ultimately use his presidential powers to soften Hunter's punishment? I'm talking, is he going to commute the sentence? Is he going to pardon Hunter? Is he going to lift a finger? 54.92% said no. 45.08% said yes. There were 28,000 and change who cast ballots. Saturday, more voting, in large part because of the strength of the CNN audience and me promoting the question there. Will the MAGA movement outlast Donald Trump? 41,617 votes cast. 58.32% TC said, no, it will not. Your thoughts?
I mean, it is so associated with Donald Trump, so I do understand what they're saying. I said that, yes, it would, just because I feel like it is bigger than one man and he sort of unleashed something that then cannot be put back. There's a lot of genie in the bottle metaphors going on in today's headlines, but I don't agree with that. I think that it will, I think the Trump era is unique and in its veracity and its characteristic and the charisma behind one man, but I think the MAGA movement is going to be here for a while.
I do too. I said on Saturday on television that I view the MAGA movement as being something on a continuum that began or maybe even preceded the Tea Party movement. And although I can't identify a single personality, it's not Ron DeSantis, it's not Ted Cruz, and it's not Marco Rubio, because none of them have the personality.
You can't out-Trump Trump. You can't do it.
Yeah, you can't. Right. So I can't name someone that I think is the next Trump. But what I'm trying to express, because I agree with the way you said it, is that it's bigger than Trump. And if I needed a reminder of that, then the reminder came 2 weeks ago in the EU elections where populist or right-wing, describe them how you wish, candidates did extremely well. Now, what's interesting is that on July 4th, there's going to be an election in the United Kingdom, and Rishi Sunak and the Tories are going to get hammered by all accounts. And some would say, well, that's at odds with what you're saying. It might be. Or the UK might be a particular case in and of itself. But when you look at what's going on in Italy, when you look at what's going on with Macron in France, when you look at what's going on in Germany, there's something percolating. And the common denominator that I see between that and the United States is that a lot of it is driven by concern over migration, porous borders, a situation that's only going to become more pronounced because of climate change and people who want to flee wherever they're living today. And along the way, with changing birth rates, there's this segment of society that feels like they've been forgotten, which is the word that I always like to use when reflecting on Trump's 2016 election. So put it all together. It's bigger than Donald Trump. It'll outlast Donald Trump, but there might not be a singular person who is the leader of what today we would call the MAGA movement. Sunday poll results: in the face of national catastrophe, could America muster the unity to rally around the flag? 24,840 voted. I hope you have the correct answer. 73.6% said, yes, we can still rally around the flag. And TC's today's poll question, because next Thursday is the debate. The debate is going to be huge viewing. CNN hosting the debate, announced rules on which the parties had agreed over the weekend, one of them being that the microphones will be muted except for the candidate whose turn it is to speak. It's a very lopsided result at Smerconish.com today. I'm asking, is that a good thing? And I'm not so sure that those who are voting in the majority are correct. But keep voting on that question. I thought it was interesting that Frank Fahrenkopf said, he wasn't sure that that was the right outcome, that they tried it a little bit. He, the co-chair of the Commission on Presidential Debates. I think it's going to stifle. I think it's really going to stifle the debate, and in a way where you don't have a live audience, it might make it almost sterile. I also think that in close quarters, something that you've noted, you're still going to hear, right, but you won't hear clearly.
Well, think about how, when we're in studio together, we are basically as close as the candidates will be. And when my mic is off and a caller says something and I laugh or say, you can hear me.
We hear it.
You can't hear it clearly, but you can hear me. And I just think that's very interesting. So it'll be behind but muted. And by the way, isn't it a sad commentary on the adults in the room that you have to do this? Come on.
Totally.
Really?
Yeah, totally. And look, the mindset, the mindset that says, some people say, well, if you leave the mics open, Trump is going to become dominant. He's going to be rude.
Then let that be the story.
Then let it happen.
Yeah.
Then let it happen.
Or let them handle it.
If people be turned off by it. Yeah. I don't know that I doubt that Trump can rein himself in.
Yeah.
But I think here's what I want to say. It's a much closer call than the polling results at Smerconish.com would have you believe.
Yeah, well said.
There's a story from Axios that we also have about double haters. A quarter of Americans hold unfavorable views of both President Biden and former President Trump, the highest share of so-called double haters at this stage in any of the last 10 elections. What was the next closest where a significant number of us said, I don't like either of them? It was 2016 with Trump and Hillary.
Well, amazing.
And apart from that, there's a 10-point drop to where you get to every other election. It's 12 or 13% say, you know what, I don't like either of them. This time it's a full quarter. You'll check that out. And I must confess, I have the story here. I've read the story here. I don't know what's going on a Greek island. Are you paying attention to this? Are Americans disappearing, or are we just focused on this now and it's become a news story?
It's not all Americans, but there have been, I think now 5 tourists found dead or reported missing on the Greek island of Mathraki in the past week, which does seem like a pretty high number to me. I mean, what do I know? But I think if you read in it, it's really hot there, and it's the hiking is a big thing, and it's like this rocky terrain. So is it the simple and awful condition of just like really, really hot, and people are on vacation and aren't used to it and are passing out or falling, or I don't know. I mean, is it that simple and terrible? I just don't know. But the fact remains, 5 in the past week. That is seemingly a very large and significant number.
And hot is the word of the week.
Oh,
holy smokes.
Come on. We're in for upper 90s. We're in for they're calling it a heat dome here in the Northeast, so that it's going to be at least 90, and by the end of the week, upper 90s for a whole week.
Whole week.
I'm not ready for it. No.
Stay cool. Vote on today's poll question at Smerconish.com. Tell me whether you think the mics ought to be muted when it's not your turn to speak in the upcoming presidential debate. Thanks, everybody. See ya.